Secrets of the Dead. A mystical story. The 1980s. Two girls were diving off a bridge into a lake. The water is like steamed milk, warm, gentle. The splashes of lake water sparkle in the first rays of the sun. Girlfriends came to the beach to swim at dawn, before the dacha dwellers took all the places. Only a lonely fisherman on the other shore sat under a willow tree. Soon the summer will be over. I'll go to the city. Having bathed, the girls lay on towels exposing their bodies to the morning sun. You are lucky. Stretched out another. And I'll stay here. Will you come in winter, on vacation? I guess. Glasha and Masha, childhood friends, even looked alike. Redheads with freckles, white skin and green eyes. And they weren't sisters, not even related, it was just a coincidence. Strangers mistook them for sisters, much to the girls' delight. Glasha, or Glafira, as her mother called her, lived in the city with her parents and grandmother. Anfisa Fyodorovna, her father's mother, lived in a huge apartment, taught at the university, held the title of professor, and in general, the lady was strict. Summer and part of the winter vacations Glasha spent at the second grandmother Nyusa, in the village 100 kilometers from the city. Her parents were happy to send their daughter to the village, knowing that she would return, rested and restored after endless colds and the hustle and bustle of the city. Grandmother Nyusia all summer fed her granddaughter healthy natural food, allowed her to swim in the lake, and walk late into the night, this kind of countryside therapy. Masha was born and raised in the village, lived with her grandmother 2 houses away from her friend. Where was the girl's mother? The story is silent, but Masha once said that her mother was taken away and will come back only in 10 years. She's in prison. It was a terrible secret of the girlfriends. Summer was imperceptibly coming to an end, and in the morning the air smelled of fall. The girls didn't want to part, but they had to. Masha stayed in the village, went to school, and Glafira was taken to the city. The usual gray weekdays flowed. Glasha counted the days until vacation but suddenly fell ill and went to the hospital with inflammation. That year she did not go to the village for the summer. She was sent to a sanatorium, then to the sea. Glafira honestly wrote to her friend. At first the correspondence was frequent and stormy, but gradually came to naught. Masha was not good at writing letters. The correspondence stopped, and Glafira took offense. The final exams came, and there was no time for vacations. And so, after a long time, Glasha went to the village. Her grandmother asked her to send her granddaughter to help in the vegetable garden and garden, at the same time to rest and gain strength before adulthood. Glafira arrived in the first days of August. The first 3 days she spent with her grandmother, they talked about everything in the world. Together they cooked delicious pies. The girl helped her grandmother a lot in the vegetable garden, and by the evening fell off her feet from fatigue. She took great offense at Mashka. The thing is that on the very first day she left her things and kissed her grandmother and rushed to her friend's house. She called, knocked on the gate, but there was silence in reply. Though Glasha saw that someone was in the house, that is, a shadow flickered in the back of the room. So no one opened the door, and did not come out. The girl did not ask her grandmother about her friend, and she herself kept silent. A week had passed since her arrival, and suddenly the weather turned bad. It became noticeably colder, and in the mornings the village was wrapped in fog. Glafira liked such weather. It calmed her down. The morning was warm and the sky was clear. Grandmother sent Glafira to a friend in the neighboring village. Grandmother's friend had bought some medicine and Glafira had to pick it up. If you walked along the road it would take 2 hours or more, but if you took a shortcut you could get there in half an hour. Glasha knew this road perfectly well. She had been walking there since childhood. The girl reached the place quickly. In the hospitable house of her grandmother's friend, she was seated at the table. While drinking tea and cakes, chatting, enough time passed. The girl went on her way back, but then she met some acquaintances and wasted another hour. The road went through a field, then there was a fork. If you went to the right, you would come to the federal highway, and if you went to the left, you would soon see a forest. It was towards the village of Glafira. You can't call it a real forest, almost all of it has been cut down. When you leave the forest, you have to pass through the farm and soon you will be in your native village. A grandmother used to live on the farm. She died about 5 years ago, so no one has lived there since then. At the fork, Glasha said goodbye to her acquaintances and hurried home. As soon as she entered the forest, she felt a sudden anxiety and fear. Although it was daytime outside, quiet and deserted, she felt creepy. Glasha felt as if someone was watching her. The girl ran through the forest without looking around. "Hey, where are you going?" Someone grabbed Glafira's arm painfully and stopped her. The voice was familiar. It was Masha. "Hi, I'm in a hurry. What are you doing? Are you offended or what? What are you, like a little girl?" Masha shook her head. "You could have opened it when I came. I wrote to you but you stopped replying. I'm sorry, I wasn't home when you came, and my grandmother, you know she's not herself. And the letters? Well, Glash, you know it's a problem for me to write essays at school and you're talking about letters." Masha looked sad. "Don't get angry, see, I went to meet you on purpose. Alright, I can't get away from you." Glasha looked at her wristwatch and was surprised. The hands were frozen at 3 in the afternoon and had stopped going. "What the hell? The watch is broken! Come on!" Her friend waved her hand carelessly. "Let's go quickly, the weather is getting worse." Glasha looked up and didn't see a cloud. Glancing at her friend, who had been standing in the dense shade of the trees during the whole conversation, it seemed to her that Masha had a strange face. Her skin was grayish, and her face looked as if it were slumped. The girl closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them, everything was normal. She would see such a thing. "The sky seems clear," muttered Glasha and followed her friend. "Soon there will be a thunderstorm." And indeed, they came out of the forest, almost reached the farm, and then the wind came. The wind was so strong that it knocked them off their feet. Lightning flashed in the sky and rumbled so loudly that it made their ears ache. Glafira had never seen such a thunderstorm in her life and was very frightened. The girl turned around looking for her friend, but Masha was nowhere to be found, as if she had vanished into thin air. She almost rushed to the farm, all the roof over her head. Slipping into the house, the girl slammed it shut behind her and pressed her back against it. There was an unpleasant odor in the house, as if a rat corpse was decomposing in the dampness under the floor. There wasn't much choice, so Glasha went into the kitchen. Despite the fact that no one had lived here for a long time, there was no dirt. Almost all the furniture was in place and dishes in the cupboards. Of course, there was no gas, water, or electricity, but there was a kerosene lamp on the windowsill. Taking the lamp in her hands, Glasha was surprised to hear a quiet splashing sound. It meant that there was fuel. On the shelf there was a box of matches that were not quite old enough. Chirk. The warm light dispersed the semi-darkness of the abandoned house. There was someone in the dark corner. Glasha shuddered with surprise and was frightened. The light of the lamp cast strange, scary shadows on the person in the corner. It was Masha. Glafira felt creepy, unable to utter a word. For a moment it seemed to her that her friend was dead. "What are you hiding there?" Glafira asked quietly. Her heart was beating like a sparrow's. She was ready to run at any moment, she was so afraid. "Nothing," Masha answered deftly. "You left me alone in a thunderstorm. You're not a little girl, but you're afraid of thunder." Masha sniggered. "You're a coward. You're such a coward yourself. Fuck you." With these words, Maria went to the door. Glasha suddenly smelled a sweetish odor, but she could not understand what it was. She watched as her friend, offended, jumped out into the street in the middle of a thunderstorm and disappeared in a stream of water. The girl only shook her head. She didn't recognize her friend at all. Had she changed so much? There was something wrong with Masha, but Glafira could not understand what it was. She stayed at the farm until the downpour subsided and came to the village at sunset. Her grandmother was at home and she was in a state of distress. Glasha told her briefly where she had waited out the storm. About the meeting with Masha, she said nothing, not knowing why she kept silent. Grandmother sent her granddaughter to bathe and quickly set the table because she was hungry all day. After a hot shower, Glasha ate and almost immediately went to bed. Her sleep was heavy and intermittent. She was shivering, or on the contrary became unbearably hot. Through her sleep, the girl heard the tinkling of glass as if someone was throwing pebbles at the window. Glasha woke up and sat up sharply in bed. That's how she and Masha called each other Pebbles in the evenings in childhood. And that's right, her friend loomed at the window in the yard. Glasha opened the window and stuck her head out. "What are you doing? Granny is asleep," she whispered. "Your grandmother has a bogatir's sleep. She can't be lifted by a cannon." Mashka giggled, and for some reason Glasha felt uncomfortable and creepy because of this laughter. "What do you want? It's nighttime. Come out, let's go for a walk. Are you crazy?" "That's what you are. You'll be off to your town soon. I'll be alone. Alone again. All right. Glasha threw on her dress and climbed out the window before closing the door to the room tightly. The two friends walked out of the village unnoticed. Suddenly Glafira stopped looking around. "Where have you brought me?" she said in utter horror. "Home," calmly answered Masha and immediately laughed. "You coward? Chickened out?" "I didn't chicken out, I just don't understand why we're here, and how did I not notice that we've already reached the cemetery?" "We just talked," shrugged her shoulders. Masha. "Oh look, Grandfather Igor, I didn't know he was dead." Glasha stretched out. Half of the yellow moon came out from behind the clouds, illuminating everything around them. As before, Glasha noticed the strange play of light on her friend's face. The face became horrible, scary, and then normal again. "And there, Pashka is a rowdy." Masha pointed somewhere in the direction. Pashka was a year older than them, and was known as a brawler and a drinker at such a young age. The girls wandered among the graves until Glasha noticed the sky turning pink. "Let's go home quickly, it's dawn. Grandmother will skin you if she finds out," Glasha said, heading for the exit. "Yeah, I'm coming." Glafira hurried home, thinking that her friend was behind her. At the gate, she saw her grandmother who was herding the cow Zorka, *. "Where have you been? Didn't you spend the night at home?" Granny frowned her eyebrows when she met her granddaughter at the gate at dawn. "Mashka and I were out there walking." "Bah! Well, I'm not a child anymore." "What Mashka?" Grandma's voice changed from stern to frightened. "My Mashka. What are you doing, Grandma? Have you forgotten Mashka?" Glafira laughed. "Were you with Masha all night?" "Well, yes, I told you. Masha knocked at night and asked me to go for a walk. What's the big deal? Soon adulthood will begin, when we'll meet again." Glasha smiled again, but she's drawn to who knows where. "Can you imagine she dragged me to the cemetery?" "To the cemetery? Bah, what are you doing? What's the matter with you?" "I knew you didn't like Masha, but not to such an extent." "It wasn't Masha. Who was it? Bah?" "Maria disappeared in February." "What do you mean, disappeared?" Glafira didn't understand, but who was with me? "I don't know, some kind of evil." "Bullshit. Masha was on her way back from town. I don't know what she was doing. She was walking like everyone else through the farm. In winter the men cleared the road of snow. Well, at least it was passable. She walked with all the villagers from the bus stop, then she stopped as if someone called her. Ours went on, but Maria stayed behind. Then we thought maybe she had a date with someone. She didn't want to be seen and judged later. But her grandmother went to look for her that night, but she didn't come back. You know, Mashka was obligatory. She wouldn't leave her grandmother. The whole crowd looked for her. But as luck would have it, it snowed and covered their tracks. They called the district police officer. They searched for a long time, more than a month, but they didn't find her. Only in the woods they found Masha's pendant, the one you gave her, remember? Why wasn't I told? I don't know. I couldn't at once. And all of a sudden, a live girl ran away. It's not true, you don't believe it, I don't believe it. I think Masha is gone, but no one will ever know where her bones are. I went to her house the day I arrived, but she wouldn't open the door. Then we met in the forest. She was sitting on a fallen tree in the shade. When the storm started, she disappeared, and only appeared in the house. That's not how it works. I never saw her go in the house, and at night she took me to the old cemetery. Why? It wasn't a friend. Glash, you should go to church or to your grandmother. You've got a bad spirit on your hands. Granny, I don't trust your pop. He's oily, not nice. I'd rather go to Grandma Yella, she'll be more helpful. Old Yelka listened to Glafira in silence. She sat in silence for a few minutes, then she took out a bowl, poured water, and lit a thick candle. The witch whispered an incantation, the wax dripped into the water. She saw something, frowned, and shook her head. You're right, girl. Your friend is not alive. She's somewhere in a narrow, dark, and damp place, and she comes to you to find her bones and bury her. Nah, it's a foul thing, a ghost not at rest. It must be a strong bond between you two to have her come to you. I think she gave you clues. But what if it's something evil? Grandma wouldn't calm down. No, if there was a demon or other evil, they'd have attacked by now. Especially in the cemetery at night, she was like a holiday dinner for the local evil. So it's not that. We need to look. I heard that the case is not closed, said Glasha's grandmother. Tell you what, I'll make you a special collection. Make it as a tea for the night. In your dreams you'll see the truth. And the district police, you'll have to call him. Say something stupid. However, I'll think it over with him myself. He's family after all. And the kid's not stupid. That was the end of it. The old witch really called the district police officer, who was her nephew, and told everything. He of course at first twisted at the temple, say quite old out of her mind, but then he got into it and agreed, only on the condition that he would call the brigade only when there was something concrete. That night, Glafira brewed some herbs and drank them before going to bed. For some reason it seemed to her that the tea stank of earth. She fell asleep quickly and soundly, and saw a terrible dream, so realistic, as if everything was happening. Masha came out of the hot gut of the bus. It's cold outside, frosty, steam comes out of her mouth in a misty cloud. The girl hurries along with everyone else. Alone in winter to walk through the wasteland is not very pleasant. They almost reached the farm. Suddenly Masha stopped and listened. Someone called her by name. Her companions went on, but she did not stop them. A dark male silhouette in the doorway of the house daubed her hand. Probably someone she knew. She had heard that the house had been sold to someone. Masha is a brave girl, but not reckless, stepped towards the house. In the neighborhood, everyone knows each other. There are no murders and other horrors. Everyone here is their own. Come to visit. The same voice, vaguely familiar. The face cannot be seen. Masha stepped inside and suddenly felt so afraid that she couldn't move. The door behind her back slammed shut like the lid of a mousetrap. The man approached, and Masha screamed. She realized she would never get out of here alive. She woke up from the cold. She was cold and uncomfortable, wearing nothing but her dress, not even underwear. The memory made her shudder. Everything ached again. It was only now that she realized it wasn't over. In the meantime, he'd put her in a box, like an unwanted toy. The old trunk of the former mistress of the house was just right for this creepy business. The torturer pulled the toy out 3 more times before it was unusable. He simply put it back into the chest, then took it down into the cellar where he buried it. There was one thing, Glafira couldn't see his face. The murderer remained in the shadows. In the morning, she told her dream to Grandma Yella and the policeman. He took the assistant and Glasha and went to the old farm. "When will they tear it down?" scolded the policeman as he entered the house. "You'll get into the cellar, or I'll get stuck." Glasha giggled, and the assistant silently went where he was told. Having roughly estimated the place, he began to dig. 15 minutes later, an iron clanking sound was heard. The girl went upstairs, the feeling that someone invisible nearby intensified. It was as if a draft ran down her legs and Glasha shivered. When the chest was lifted to the surface, Glasha turned away. In it was the body of Maria. Soon there was no place to fall on the farm. Investigators and experts came there. The policeman made up some story about how they found the body. He couldn't tell about the witch and the dream. The murderer was yet to be found, and Glafira hoped that her poor friend had found peace. After the funeral, Glafira went to the city. She had no strength to stay in the village. The night before she left for the city, she dreamed of her friend. Masha was in blue, her favorite dress, on her face sadness and concern. Her face was frowning and as if frightened. "Masha, you're here, shish, he'll hear," whispered the dead friend. "Who is he? Run! Run without looking back or stopping. Do you understand?" Glasha nodded, and at the same moment she woke up. What was that? A warning? There's a killer on the loose. The girl felt uneasy. Suddenly, a pebble flew into the window. Ding! To be continued.